can be said that another link in our chain of stories has been opened with a question. And that question is, when there is no longer a guru to tell us we've arrived, or perhaps like Divine Mother, have a messenger come to tell us we'd been chosen and given a word, or a Zen master to pass on the staff and the bowl, or to confirm our enlightenment. How do we know that we know? Or as that story goes, how do we know that we have the proper authority? There are several old Sufi stories that set the scene for us to possibly answer this question for ourselves. The first is a story about that seeker who wanted to know the word, the most great name, because he thought that when he learned this word, or the most great name, he would be able to alleviate evil and heal people in the world. So he sought out and made the long journey to find one who, it was said, knew this most great name, this word. And when he arrived in his presence, he asked, "Will you teach me the most great name, the word?" And this being said, "First, you must pass a test, like I myself had to pass a test. Are you willing?" And of course the seeker said, "Yes, give me that test." So he was told, "Go to the city gate and sit outside that gate from dawn till dusk, and then return to me and tell me the most significant happening of that day." So the seeker went off and indeed sat down outside the city gates, watching the comings and goings for the whole day. And then at dusk he returned to the knower of the name. And the knower of the name said, "Tell me, what was the most significant happening of the day?" And the seeker said, "Well, as I was sitting outside the gate, an old man came with a load of wood on his shoulders to sell to those within the city walls. But when he came to the guards at the gate, they demanded that he pay the entrance fee to that inner sanctum of the city, and the old man had no money. So he begged the guards to allow him to enter the gate to sell his wood so that he could pay the entry fee to the city gate. But they refused him. In fact, they beat him and stole his wood and sent him away. So the knower of the name said to the seeker, "Well, what was your thought about this happening?" And the seeker said, "My thought was that if only I knew that sacred name, that word, that the fate of that old man would have been very different." the knower of the name, said, "This was your test. The old man carrying the wood was the master." The second story is about that dervish who was with the Sufi master in his taqiyya for many, many years as a seeker after truth. But one day, without seeming rhyme or reason, he left that taqiyya without a word, and he went off and opened a small shop where he traded goods of all kinds. But then there was another dervish who was in that taqiyya at the same time as the trader, and he became a wandering dervish, moving from place to place. And one day he found himself in the small village in which his earlier compatriot had set up his shop. And when they met, the wandering dervish berated the man, saying, "How could you abandon the spiritual path, go without a word, I beg your pardon, and now become an ordinary trader?" But the trader said nothing. He treated his companion quite cordially, and then the dervish moved on. But from that time on, in the places he went, he would often tell the story about one who'd been his companion in the taqiyya, who had abandoned the path and just become an ordinary trader. But then, after many years of wandering, it so happened that this wandering dervish happened to meet, as we know happens sometimes, the prophet Qadir, the green one, as he's called, who comes to those who are at a crisis point or a ripe moment in their life. And Qadir said to our dervish, when the dervish asked of him, "Where should I go? Who should I go to?" And Qadir said, "Go to the trader in such and such a village. Listen and heed what he says. He is the teacher of the age." The dervish said, "But how could it be him? He abandoned the spiritual path. He left the taqiyya to become an ordinary man, a trader." Again, Qadir said, "Go to him. He is the teacher of the age. Heed and obey what he says." These two stories set in train for us the possibility of knowing for ourselves. How do we know we have the proper authority? How do we know that we know? No guru, no master, no messenger, no teacher. How do we know that we know? How do we know when we have the proper authority? What is the meaning of these stories for us?